Don't turn off. I know you think you've seen this before. I'm Will. That is the brand new Li Shang L8, and this is China driven.
Perfect, perfect, perfect.
Don't worry, your eyes are not deceiving you. This looks very familiar, especially if you've seen our Li Auto L9 video, and that's completely deliberate by Li Auto. The way they described it to me was that the way they're going to set up their future model lineup is very similar to how Apple sets up its phones. The flagship L9 is going to be equivalent, say, to an iPhone Pro Max. The L8 Max would be kind of like the iPhone Pro, and then the L8 Pro would be like the regular iPhone. Basically, variants on the same core product. The Li L8 is going to be replacing the outgoing Li 1, a very popular car here in China. Still comes with 6 seats, still can get it in tech blue. But what the L8 Max gives you is a lot of the functionality and tech of the L9. Now, obviously, there is still some bells and whistles that the L9 has over this, but a vast majority, it's inside the L8 Max. Now, the L8 Pro does away with a few things in order to lower the price of the L8 further. Now, we don't actually have a price for it yet. The launch event is tomorrow, but they're saying between 300 and 400,000 RMB. But don't worry for the L9, because there's still plenty of stuff that the L9 has over the L8 Max. But what the L8 Max allows is for you to get a slightly smaller, cheaper vehicle with a lot of the core functionality and premiumness that you'll find in the L9. Okay, let's break down this L8 Max and L8 Pro business. We'll first talk about the ADAS functionality between the two. Now, this is an L8 Max, and it comes with AD Max. If that sounds familiar, it is because it's the same ADAS suite that you'll find in the L9. That means it comes with 128 line hybrid LiDAR, 6 8-megapixel cameras, and 5 2-megapixel cameras, all being powered by 2 Orin X chips with 508 TOPS. It also means that it will be able to run NOA exactly the same as the L9. It's basically LiDAR and vision with HD mapping together. Now, the L8 Pro comes with what Li Auto calls AD Pro. It's their vision only based ADAS suite, which means you won't be getting the LiDAR on the roof. It's powered by 1 8-megapixel camera and 9 2-megapixel cameras. There's a milliwave radar as well. Now, that is being powered by a Journey 5 chip from Horizon Robotics. If that name sounds familiar to you, it's because the Li 1 was running a Journey 3 chip from Horizon Robotics. However, the Li 1 only had 10 TOPS of processing power, whereas the L8 Pro with the Journey 5 chip has 128 TOPS, so quite an upgrade. In terms of power output, the Li L8 is exactly the same as the Li L9, 330 kilowatts and 620 Newton meters of torque. Now, the L9 is 0.2 seconds faster than this to 100 kilometers an hour. This does it in 5.5 seconds. However, this is 1 second faster than the Li 1, the model which it replaces. Now, in terms of suspension, it has the same double wishbone front and 5 multi-link suspension in the rear as the Li L9. It also has the same CDC and the same air suspension. And if you want to know what that's capable of, then check out our video of test driving the Li L9 on rough road to really show you what this magic body control is able to do. Now, the Li L8 is an extended range EV like all Li Autos up until this point. Now, that means it's got an engine and it's got batteries, and they can work independently or together to create the power for the electric motors that drive the wheels. The engine isn't connected to the wheels. There's no gearbox or drive shafts in here. Now for this engine, it's a 1.5 turbocharged 4-cylinder, the same as you'll find in the L9. The outgoing Li 1 was using a 1.2 turbocharged 3-cylinder. In terms of battery, the Li L8 uses a 42.8 kilowatt hour NCM 622 from Catel, and the L9 uses a larger 44.5 kilowatt hour NCM 622 from Catel as well. The outgoing Li 1 was using a lower energy density NCM 523 from Catel, and that battery was also smaller than in the L8. It was only 40.5 kilowatt hours. What that means is the L8 has a larger EV only range, 175 kilometers on the WTLP, whereas the Li 1 only had 155 kilometers. Now combined, 1,100 kilometers on the WTLP. Now I'm not really going to spend any time going over the styling at the front end of the L8, because let's be honest, it's exactly the same as the L9. You still get this over 2 meter continuous light bar that juts out at the top, and you get the same headlights as you do on the L9. The biggest difference of this front end really is the fact it says L8 down the bottom here. So if you want to know my thoughts about the styling, then you should definitely check out our first look of the L9. Now I do have to say that it still looks, you know, kind of futuristic and cool. Looks very tech focused. I'm a fan of the L9, so it means I'm a fan of this, right? Now obviously the side is also very, very similar to the L9, but what I will point out is that the rear overhang, this being a shorter vehicle, is a little bit less, and what that does is it makes it look like the cabin is being pushed back a little more. It isn't really, but it looks that way because of the rear end being a little bit shorter. You get the same pop-out handles, you get the same soft closed doors here as well. You get that same strong straight belt line across as well. Now when I came to film this morning, I saw somebody driving one of these and I thought to myself, that looks different to the L9, and I couldn't quite place what had changed compared to the L9 back here. And it took me a while to realize it. Now I wonder if you can see it or not, but what it is they've moved the license plate from here down to the bottom. Other than that, again, the styling is extremely similar. You still get the same hidden window wiper back here. You also get the same kick to open as well. And I can never do it. Oh, I haven't got the key. Oh, that's why. So the Li L8 claims that it has a larger boot than the outgoing Li 1 with 511 litres. Again, it's got a very flat load lip here, and if that doesn't make things easy enough, you can always drop it on its air suspension on the rear axle to aid loading into the boot, thanks to the fact that all the Li 8s come with air suspension as standard. If you need more space, you can just drop one of the third row seats or both of them, and then you've got gobs of room to put stuff back here. You can also raise them electronically as well. So we're in the front, I promise you, of the Li L8, and it looks pretty much the same as the L9. You still got a heads-up display here and a mini LED panel here on the steering wheel. You still get dual 15.7-inch displays with the same kind of functionality as the L9, but here they're LCD instead of OLED like they are in the L9, and you can see they're kind of thicker units. Now in the L8 Max, it comes with the same dual 8155 that you'll find in the L9. In the Li L8 Pro, it comes with a single 8155 CPU from Snapdragon, and that's because there's no rear screen for the second row passengers. Up here, the front seat and the second row seats are all heated, ventilated with massage, and the third row have heat. They do differ from the L9 in the fact that the way the massage works in here is more like the L1, using the kind of airbags for the massage rather than tiny little fists punching you in the back. But you know, it's still massage functionality. It's still got a time of flight camera in here and the voice assistant, so you can still do all that kind of fun voice and gesture control. Li Xiang Tongxue,
我在。
这个打开.
主驾车
I mean,
正在降下。
it's quite cool. In the back of the Lee L8 Max, which means we still have this rear entertainment screen. Now, it is a bit of a chunkier unit than the L9's OLED panel because this again is LCD, but it's still 3K. Now in the L8 Pro, where you'll lose the rear entertainment, you also lose 2 overhead speakers, but you still get the same 1920 watt speaker system in both the L8 Max and L8 Pro, and it's still a Dolby Spatial Audio 7.3.4. Back here you still have a time of flight camera, and you can still do all of the stuff where you can kind of use your hand to control the screen back here. Now, as far as comfort goes, again, equal to the L9, the seats are equally as comfortable. Obviously space is a little bit less in here, but compared to Lee 1, this has 51 millimeters of extra space in the second row, and compared to an X7, 101 millimeters supposedly. So good amount of rear space back here. You can also still control the passenger chair here as well in the back. Still 3-zone climate control with your panel back here, and also you have the DP port as well as the USB-C fast charging ports, which means you can plug in some VR headset or VR glasses like these, and you can mirror the screens. Now you can mirror the front passenger screens, or you can mirror this rear screen, which means even in the L8 Pro, even though you don't have a rear entertainment screen, you could still pick up a VR headset, plug it in, and you can still watch what the passenger is watching in the front. So that's a nice feature. As I said before, these seats, you know, they still have ventilation, heating, and the kind of Lee 1 airbag massage. They're very comfortable, as all the seats are in the L9, L8, and even the Lee 1s are not that bad. These are better than the Lee 1s. They are softer and more padded. Now, one thing that you do lose in the L8 over the L9 is there is no refrigerator or kind of like heated storage back here. Instead, it's just a little pocket and a kind of rubberized little pocket. Whereas in the L9, the flagship, you do get that heater cooler, but it's not here. So, I mean, it's not like something that you desperately need in a car, but it is a nice feature in the L9, but reserved only for the flagship, and I'm okay with that. So I'm in the third row here in the Lee L8, and honestly, it's not that bad. In terms of the size back here, compared to Lee 1, you get 2 millimeters of extra space. Compared to an X7, you get 22 millimeters of extra space. Back here, you've got a cup holder, you've got rear heated seats, and you've got a USB-C port. Back here, you've also got your own air outlet, and the seats can also recline a fair way to give you kind of more headroom and a more relaxed feeling. Now, the seat in front of me is in a reasonable position. I haven't pushed it all the way forwards, and it's not all the way back. This seat is all the way back. If this seat is all the way back, then you're not going to be able to get your feet in. But in a reasonable position, if you have somebody in front of you, then you can easily have more than enough room back here. So I bought in the old Warhorse here, the Lee 1, to do a size comparison with the incoming Lee L8. Now, the Lee L8 is in every way bigger than the outgoing Lee 1. Impressively, the Lee L8's wheelbase has grown by 70 millimeters to 3,005 millimeters. And remember that this has a larger 4-cylinder up front compared to the smaller 3-cylinder found in the Lee 1. Now, the Lee L8 is 35 millimeters wider and 40 millimeters taller than the Lee 1 at 1,995 millimeters in width and 1,800 millimeters in height. In fact, its height is the same as the L9. I'm a big fan of the Lee L9, and essentially the Lee L8 Max is giving you 95% of the features and functions you find in the L9 at a cheaper price point. What's not to love about that? But are people ready for their car lineup to be an iPhone kind of structure? We'll have to wait and see. Okay, so that's it. It's a sad farewell to the Lee 1. It was a great vehicle when it was released. A lot of features for the price, and hello Li L8. Basically a more premium, more feature packed 6-seater, and Li Auto will be hoping that it will be an even bigger sales success than the Li 1. I'm Will, that's the old Li 1, that's the new Li L8, and this is China Driven.
Perfect. Perfect. Perfect.